everyone. Here are the highlights from today's podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Joanne Reagan Experience. Today we have quite an interesting guest, and I really look forward to our discussion. Before us, we have Clarence Doggs, a scholar and professor of philosophy who specializes in the philosophy of education. Greetings, Clarence.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Clarence Doggs, huh? You wouldn't happen to know someone named Claire Katz, would you? I believe she is in the same field as you are, and she is overall a delightful and brilliant person.
I don't, but I can understand how someone can make that connection.
Can you tell me a bit about what exactly is philosophy of education? Because before I came across you, I had never heard of that subfield until this past week.
It is the theories, visions, and approaches that involve development of the individual or the group. Now, often this is discussed in the context of students in classrooms along with their teachers. However, this also includes parents and their children, or a coach with an athlete. What these relationships have in common is that there is someone who, 1, lacks certain knowledge or skills, and 2, is not in a particular state because they lack that said knowledge and skills. We have a point A, the initial point, and a point B, which we want to get to. And the education is the link that bridges the gap between A and B. Philosophy of education asks, well, how and why we're going to get there, and what exactly it would look like.
That's really interesting. I've never thought of it like that. Now tell me, what are some of the big names, the big philosophers involved in philosophy of education, to help give us a sense as to where we would begin?
It goes as far back as one of the most OG philosophers, Plato, who extensively considered the role that education plays in the development of society and the individual. The ultimate aim of Plato's project was to create and maintain a society that will have each person provide for society according to their own abilities.
Fascinating. You see, I am a fan of Plato myself. I have read some of his dialogues and a bit of the Republic, but I had never made that connection, despite how much I have personally invested in him.
You'd be surprised where you can raise the discussion and insights of the philosophy of education. I know I was when I first explored it, and sometimes I still am to this day. Another philosopher worth mentioning is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, whose influence on education still echoes into the present. One of the main things he emphasized was the role that experience should play in a person's academic and personal education.
Can you explain what experience means in that context?
Experience to him is exploring the features and details of the world firsthand for yourself as opposed to reading from a book or hearing about them from a lecture. He is believed that information divorced from what it is describing is absent of the force and impact it would have if it were experienced firsthand.
Such as a teacher assigning a science project or a field trip to a museum.
Those are great examples because it gives the student a great opportunity to learn firsthand the relation and significance of the information they gain from experience. To give you one of my favorite and one of the most woke philosophers were Pablo Freire, argued for an approach to education that allowed for one to become more human and a more active member of the world. It is through education, be strongly believed, that one can truly be free, autonomous, and recognize themselves as a part of the world.
Wow, I didn't think education could be so powerful.
It certainly is, and if you were looking at the world in the past, you could see numerous instances in where a marginalized or discriminated group is restricted of education. That is because education can provide one with the conceptual or intellectual tools to help lift themselves out of their oppression and become dignified members of society.
Like how ISIS or the Taliban restrict women from receiving an education, right?
That's right, broadly speaking. For one group to maintain its power and dominance over another group it oppresses, they must keep the oppressed at a level of ignorance where it is highly difficult for the oppressed to resist their oppressors and liberate themselves.
What do you believe to be the biggest issue facing education today?
If you don't want to get overtime with this, then don't get me started. Well, one of the primary major problems of our education system is the problem of underfunding and disproportionate underfunding. This is a problem I first explored through a powerful book written in 1991 by Jonathan Kozell called Savage Inequalities. In the book, he details his experiences and observations of severely underfunded schools with mostly minority students. He argued there is a strong positive correlation between underfunding and low performance and outcome.
Right, because I'm sure if you do not have adequate facilities, equipment, and faculty, then students will not be able to learn as efficiently as students who do.
Exactly. You're right on the mark. And Kozel makes another excellent point. Many Americans pride themselves over how free and more especially how democratic our country is. Yet he does not find that to be the case because how our education system and funding places some part of our developing population at an epistemic and practical deficit.
And it's so concerning to me that this book was written in 1991. So imagine entire generations of students put at an unfair deficit.
So if that is the case, as Kozel argues, then can we really say we have an inclusive democracy when a significant portion of our population are not effectively prepared by our very own education system?
So we're nearing the end of our show. I would like to end the show by asking you, in a minute, can you make it a case as to why philosophy of education is worth exploring?
Well, that question can be answered, quote, from John Dewey. Education is not preparation for life, education is life itself. Education is not something that is separate and distinct from life. In one way or another, we grow and develop in ways that shape the course of our lives, who we are and become, and how we perceive the world. Because of this, I believe in two things. One, we would learn and experience this unfolding world so that we can best know how to interact with it, broadly speaking. Two, we should facilitate environments and foster mentalities that best allow for others to learn and develop effectively so that they can learn, then experience, then apply, then repeat.
Wow, that is quite a message. Well, that wraps up today's podcast. Clarence. This was a profound and insightful discussion. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thanks so much for having me on.